Good afternoon, everyone. I am Miriam Hamdouni. I'm counselor at Morocco Mission, and I am here on behalf of Ambassador Hilal, the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco to the UN. On behalf of the co-facilitators, Her Excellency Ambassador Sophie de Smet and Ambassador Omar Hilal, we would like to welcome you to this informal hearing for stakeholders on the Food for Thought paper in preparation for the political declaration of the World Social Summit in 2025 under the title The Second World Summit for Social Development. Ambassador de Smet and Ambassador Hilal would have loved to be here in person with you this afternoon, but unfortunately, given the limited number of available rooms combined with their packed agendas, and also in order to be able to meet you before the circulation of the Zero Draft and hear your views on the Food for Thought paper, the co-facilitators have requested us to meet with you today. We would like to share that we have circulated the roadmap for the intergovernmental negotiation process on the political declaration of the summit. We aim to release the Zero Draft before the end of this week and to start the negotiation process during the first week of May 2025. The objective of the hearing today is to listen to your feedback, views on the Food for Thought paper circulated on the 7th of March 2025. Your views are important to us as we pave the way for conducting the intergovernmental process. Ambassador de Smet and Ambassador Hilal remain committed and dedicated to facilitating the upcoming negotiations with transparency and inclusivity, and with the aim to achieve an outcome that is forward-looking, action-oriented, and consensus-driven. In drafting this Food for Thought paper, we did not choose a selective approach of topics, areas of action, or specific issues. We have tried our best to mirror the reflections and proposals sent to us in a comprehensive and summarized manner. We have served as the messenger for inputs from all delegations and stakeholders. We have also received many contributions from the UN system, entities, and specialized agencies, as well as contributions from civil society and NGOs. The co-facilitators welcome indeed the interest in the summit and in its outcome. And we are optimistic that this level of engagement can only help in shaping an ambitious and successful summit. Distinguished representatives, the Food for Thought paper paves the way towards the culmination of the Zero Draft of the political declaration. Allow us to briefly go through its main element. As proposed, in the Food for Thought paper, we suggested a structure for the political declaration into 4 chapters, a preamble that explains the summit vision, an assessment of the current situation, a call to action, and a concluding chapter focused on reviewing and following up on the declaration's commitment. Turning to general context, in this part, the co-facilitators tried to give some context towards the summit in Qatar, and also try to highlight new and increasing challenges and opportunities based on the contributions received. The document also given some striking statistics and facts that highlight the challenges and opportunities ahead. In the general context, we also underlined the importance of a people-centered whole of society and whole of government approach to succeed. With regard to the general principles, we based this section on the recommitment to Copenhagen Declaration and in the modalities of the summit, Agenda 2030, and of course, as we mentioned, the 3 core pillars of social development, effective multilateralism, international cooperation, human rights and fundamental freedoms, and the commitments in the 2023 SDG Summit, Political Declaration, and the Pact for the Future. And now I will turn the floor to my colleague, Frédéric of Belgium Mission, to carry on the presentation.
Good afternoon, Frédéric van Petegem from the Belgium Mission, and like Miriam at the Moroccan Mission, working on this process with the co-facilitators. Allow me first of all, of course, to welcome you here on behalf of Ambassador de Smet and Ambassador Hilal And I want to also give their regrets again for not being able to make it for the reasons that Miriam explained. But of course, they've already requested us for quite a good debrief afterwards, so that they are very much aware of what was said here today. And of course, the main priority for them was to still hear all your views in a timely manner. Now turning to part 4 of the Food for Thought paper. So we have identified there 14 areas of actions. The co-facilitators, they mentioned them as the 3+1, the 3 core pillars of social development, and 11 other areas. Together, they aim at taking concrete and integrated steps to close the persistent implementation gaps from the 1995 Copenhagen Declaration and to accelerate progress towards the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The key actions include poverty eradication, full and productive employment and decent work for all, social integration, food security and nutrition, physical and mental health to meet universal health coverage, quality education and lifelong learning, harnessing technology and AI for social development, climate resilience, just transition and disaster risk reduction, gender equality and empowerment of women and girls, adequate housing, urbanization and water and sanitation, migration, financing social development and international cooperation, social policies and the role of the family, and renewing the social contract. Under each action area, we have included concise bullet points reflecting the ideas, inputs, and areas of potential commitments for the call of action. Turning now to the last section of the Food for Thought paper on the implementation, follow-up, and the review of the political declaration. Here you will notice that the elements under this section were put forward in a manner to invite thoughts in a more open way on how possible review will be done, in which period, and what are the actors to be involved. We have also included bullet points on the strengthening of the Commission on Social Development, what are the main elements of its revitalization, and what will be its role in the review process. As you know, of course, 30 years have passed since the first World Summit on Social Development. And then, of course, in between, there was the 2000 special session. And of course, it is the intention of the co-facilitators to have a clear follow-up path of Doha that avoids another wait of 30 years. The co-facilitators and ourselves are convinced that your voice matters and your opinion and views are essential and transformative for our process. Your perspectives drawn from the ground will indeed provide a meaningful added value to address the current and emerging challenges facing social development. And now we are here really to hear from you. As you will notice, there is no pre-established list of speakers. For once, you're not really invited to push the mic button unless you're called upon. We work with a new system that we hope you understood the explanations of the Secretariat. So there's a QR code where you need to register to take the floor, which was presented on the screen earlier on. If someone did not have it, I think you can find it at the Secretariat. To use our time in the most efficient way and ensure everyone can take the floor, you are requested to respect time limit to 3 minutes. I will now open the floor and... Sorry, it can be shifted. Okay. Sorry. I will now give the floor to the Mercy International Association. So you normally just push the button and it should come on.
Thank you. Many thanks. I represent Mercy International Association and I serve as chair of the NGO Committee on Migration. Thank you for sharing the updates on the World Social Summit process and the updated timeline. We appreciate the Food for Thought paper for highlighting key themes for the forthcoming political declaration of the Second World Social Summit. While the paper acknowledges the worsening refugee crisis and deepening inequalities and recognizes the positive contributions of migrants to social development, the treatment of migration and displacement issues can be enhanced to further reflect their critical role in social development. Migration in all its forms, whether voluntary or forced, regular or irregular, is both a driver and consequence of social development and must be addressed holistically across the 3 core areas: poverty eradication, decent work, and social inclusion. First, on poverty eradication. Migration is frequently driven by poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity in countries of origin. Yet when governed effectively, migration can also be a powerful force for poverty reduction, both through remittances and diaspora engagement. In transit countries, immediate support for migrants in distress must be coupled with assistance to local communities. In destination countries, many migrants face poverty due to discrimination, precarious work, and legal barriers. The political declaration should acknowledge the interconnections between migration and sustainable local development, access to services, housing, and climate adaptation strategies to ensure people can live in dignity. Second, on decent work, all migrants, regardless of status, have the right to decent work and just labor conditions, and must be seen not solely as labor, but as rights-bearing individuals contributing to societies. In countries of origin, investment in skills development, vocational training, and dignified employment can create conditions so that people are not compelled to take desperate journeys. In transit and destination countries, migrants often engage in informal or exploitative labor without protections. The political declaration must call for full implementation of international labor standards, equal pay for work of equal value, safe working conditions, and mechanisms for redress. And third, on social inclusion, in origin countries, reintegration of returned migrants requires coordinated efforts to ensure access to psychosocial support, employment, and community inclusion. In transit countries where migrants may remain long-term, access to education, healthcare, and legal support fosters stability and resilience. Destination countries must dismantle structural barriers to inclusion, including legal restrictions, xenophobia, and racial discrimination. We propose that the final political declaration address these issues holistically and explicitly recognize migration as integral to social development. We encourage the co-facilitators to align the Zero Draft with language in the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration and the Global Compact on Refugees that affirms the dignity, rights, and agency of all migrants. We look forward to 2030 and beyond, and will continue to follow and support this process to ensure that migration is not a necessity born of deprivation, but a choice exercised with dignity and opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to IFFD.
Distinguished co-facilitators, thank you for convening this stakeholder briefing for the information regarding the summit. This is Alex Vasquez, and I serve as the Director of International Relations of IFFD, International Federation for Family Development. As we operate in 68 countries, promoting family-friendly policies and parenting support programs as key pillars of sustainable development. In preparation for the second Social Summit, IFFD is coordinating a network of young researchers across 18 countries and a network of more than 200 mayors and governors. These networks are generating evidence-based insights to ensure that the voices and needs of families and its members are meaningfully reflected in the global agenda. Our collective efforts are focused on 3 areas, totally related to the core pillars mentioned before, to strengthening social cohesion from a family-centered perspective. The first one is mental health and well-being, with particular attention to parents and caregivers. The second one is the recognition and support for care systems, including unpaid care work and intergenerational solidarity. And the third one is the role of new technologies, ensuring that digital transitions are inclusive and empowering for families and communities. We welcome the Food for Thought paper as a thoughtful and timely foundation. We strongly encourage the summit process to continue engaging civil society as co-creators of resilient and inclusive social contracts. In this regard, I would like to ask if there's a timeline for the registration process on the side of an organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I give the floor to South-North Scholars.
Excellencies and collaborators, present and future. I am Charlie Zong. I am a technology researcher and co-director of South-North Scholars. We are the youth-led global knowledge network for sustainable development. The reflections on the document that I share reflect our experience using digital and AI tools to help over 3,000 young people in 128 countries collaborate with experts at the UN, World Bank, and beyond on research and dialogue. We're here to discuss what it takes to harness technology to advance social development. This is one of the defining challenges of our generation, and we are at a critical moment for action. In 1995, during the World Social Summit, 0.04% of humanity was online. 30 years later, we stand at 68%, and nearly 1/5 of humanity has come online since 2019. In magnitude, in velocity, and in impact, this is the most profound shift in the human condition. To respond to the profound challenges of polarization, youth mental health, and other urgent issues, the United Nations is creating a 21st century architecture of international cooperation to achieve global public goods like digital governance. But we must stress that finding viable solutions to these challenges depends on building inclusive innovation processes as a public good, to go beyond technological innovation, to embrace intellectual innovation and who we consider to be experts, and where we look for evidence of solutions that work. Because young people are already innovating solutions to these challenges in their communities every day, and they're experts at deploying resources in their local context. So their expertise is vital to translate technical solutions into tangible ones. If we want local solutions to inform global models of social development, we must recognize that developing countries is not a country, and sustainable development is not a one-time outcome. Policymakers and senior leaders often tell me young people know technology best, but young people seldom have the opportunity to shape the most powerful decision-making technology that drives social development, benchmarks. And this is very important at this moment because when we think about technologies like AI, the impact doesn't come from inventing the foundational models or methods. It comes from widespread adoption, accessibility, affordability, adaptability. The single most powerful impact of new technologies like AI is the opportunity for the massive investments in these tools to accelerate global initiatives that target all of the interlinked barriers that exclude billions of people from using them. No matter how rapidly we scale these technologies, their impacts will be diminished if people do not have digital literacy, if they're not connected to the internet, if they can't go to school, if they are suffering poverty and hunger. All of these are technology issues. They are all important. To achieve these impacts, we have to design metrics that treat AI tools not as super intelligent problem solvers, but as a normal technology that, like electricity or the internet, needs locally informed investment to become accessible. Because as a young leader and technology researcher, I cannot just measure progress by the capability scores of frontier models, not when 2.6 billion people remain offline, 1.1 billion face multidimensional poverty, 251 million children still don't have a chance to go to school. That's why young people aren't just asking what our benchmarks of progress are. We're asking who shapes them, because what motivates young people to innovate is the possibility to transform technical progress into human progress. And we know that future generations will measure us by how much we invested in our capabilities for collective intelligence, not just artificial intelligence. So to create food for thought, as we have in this paper, let's feed the thinkers. I thank you.
Thank you. And I'll give the floor to Sisters for Charity Federation.
Your Excellencies, UN officials, esteemed delegates, and all stakeholders and colleagues present here today. My name is Dr. Jimmy Walters, the main representative for the Sisters of Charity Federation, an organization compiled of 13 religious congregations and 25 countries working for care of earth, rights of women and girls, and against poverty in all its forms. I also serve as the chair of the Working Group to End Homelessness. Our working group is compiled of 40 ECOSOC accredited NGOs advocating at the UN to end homelessness, and I thank you for this opportunity. We are deeply concerned that one very large group of people, more than 2% of the world's population, are not named nor discussed in the Food for Thought document, and these are people who are experiencing homelessness. This includes people living without accommodation, people living in temporary or crisis accommodation, people living in inadequate and insecure housing, and people who lack access to affordable housing. The needs of people who are experiencing homelessness requires a response specific to their situations. In some countries, homelessness is a result of an absence of land rights, and in others, it is triggered by a lack of affordable housing. Women, girls, and their families constitute a significant percentage of the global homeless. Housing and homelessness and poverty and homelessness need to be differentiated to address the causes and consequences of homelessness and alleviate its devastating effects on human dignity. We implore you to include people experiencing homelessness in the Second World Social Summit, and we implore member states to do the following. 1, safeguard the human rights to an adequate standard of living, addressing homelessness as an affront to human dignity and an obstacle to enjoyment of human rights by fulfilling commitments to provide safe, affordable, and supportive housing for all and land rights for all. 2, ensure homelessness is prioritized in the discussion of poverty at the UN, including all the preparations for and at the Second World Summit for Social Development, and in discussions across the SDGs, as ending homelessness is essential to ending poverty and achieving Agenda 2030 and its promise to leave no one behind. Number 3, recognize that homelessness takes many forms. Number 4, employ improved data collection methodologies and reporting on homelessness through the SDG framework. Accurate and current numbers of people experiencing homelessness, along with disaggregated demographic data that can be universally applied to formulate effective national, regional, and global policy is needed. Number 5, expand the capacity of all countries to foster social resilience and inclusive societies by increasing and extending nationally owned universal social protection systems and floors, especially for family and children, people with disabilities, and socially excluded persons, such as people experiencing homelessness, through domestic resource mobilization and fair and progressive taxation, debt forgiveness, and encouraging international cooperation. And finally, number 6, enacting comprehensive policies and intervention to prevent and address homelessness by increasing the supply of affordable, permanent housing with social supports and including persons experiencing homelessness or people at serious risk of homelessness in the design, implementation, and monitoring of all policies and programs, while including civil society, especially the NGO Working Group to End Homelessness, in all UN activities, programs that target homelessness. As we move beyond Copenhagen and Agenda 2030, the SDG Summit and Summit of the Future, we do so with recognition that the goals are indivisible. Our vision of a world that is inclusive and equitable, that brings together peace, the planet, and development with people at the center. Let us not leave out the most vulnerable who lack the ability to live with dignity and participate in society, people experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Major Group for Children and Youth, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, co-facilitators. I'm Yugradna Srivastava, one of the 2 organizing partners for the Major Group for Children and Youth, which is a global constituency that brings together more than 20,000 youth organizations on different issues and processes at the UN. First, we are pleased to share that the ECOSOC Youth Forum concluded last week as the largest and broadest gathering of young people that is not just attended by young people, but also co-designed and co-convened by the youth constituency, MGCY. More than 2,000 people took part in the Youth Forum, making it as the same size as the HLPF. The Youth Forum had more side events than the HLPF, highlighting the work being done by young people from their communities across the globe. The Voices of Youth report from this Youth Forum will have a specific section on youth voices towards World Social Summit, and we call upon member states and the Social Summit Secretariat, UN DESA, to take up those recommendations. First, in terms of general reflections on the Food for Thought paper, while we welcome a few references to the youth that we saw in the Food for Thought, more needs to be strengthened. It must be highlighted at the outset of the Zero Draft that children and youth, women and indigenous peoples are the most on front lines of all challenges, and that implementation of social transformation must include them both as stakeholders, but also as co-design partners. We also cannot pick and choose which issues impact young people the most. Most issues, if not all, do. Therefore, each section of the Zero Draft must capture which stakeholder groups are most directly impacted by those issues. So not just UN processes, not just references to recommendations, but also clearly outlining which are the stakeholder groups that are most impacted by this. Additionally, when it comes to follow-up, A clear reference should be added to NGO CSOC-D and major groups and other stakeholders mechanism as the civil society mechanism for the implementation and follow-up of the outcome document of the World Social Summit and the 2030 Agenda. Second, the youth constituency has been spearheading a youth roadmap towards the summit, including youth participation at CSOC-D 63 and launching a dedicated youth working group, convening more than 1,000 groups globally. This work will continue. Third, we must build on the momentum and convening of the ECOSOC Youth Forum, and we call for strengthened youth civil society engagement at the third committee of the UNGA. With this, we announce our intention to host a youth-led youth forum for the UNGA third committee as a pre-event to the next ECOSOC Youth Forum. Finally, when it comes to the broader multi-stakeholder and civil society spaces in lead up to Social Summit, we call for co-design and rights-based engagement. Any action days hosted before the Social Summit in Qatar or in New York should be built off the best practices of the SDG Summit Action Days as opposed to Summit of the Future Action Days. Additionally, the youth constituency as well as broader civil society should inform the political declaration of the summit at all stages. Finally, in conclusion, we are pleased to share that we are organizing decentralized youth assemblies in lead up to the summit, and we will share with you what comes out of it. Finally, we call upon support from the host country, Qatar, to support a youth forum, a youth-led youth forum in Qatar, to be taking place in Qatar at the summit itself so that it can inform and bring together youth voices at the social summit. We request the support from the co-hosts, co-facilitators, and UN DESA on the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give now the floor to Human Rights Now.
Distinguished delegates, my name is Larissa Trushin, and I currently serve as the International Engagement Directorate for the Migration, Youth, and Children Platform, the official migration constituency of the major group for children and youth. This intervention will focus on the topic of migration, as included in the Food for Thought paper circulated on 7 March 2025. Firstly, the positives. MyCP firmly supports the recognition of migration as a positive force in the Food for Thought paper. By recognizing migration as a driver of inclusive growth and sustainable development, the Food for Thought paper shifts the narrative to ensure that migrants are not only viewed as a humanitarian issue or a crisis to be managed, but also as powerful enablers of development. Second, MyCP also appreciates that the Food for Thought paper acknowledges the importance of promoting safe, orderly, and regular migration pathways, directly complementing the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. To strengthen this even further, the Food for Thought paper should explicitly reference the GCM. Lastly, MyCP firmly supports the inclusion of youth, internally displaced people, and migrants as active participants in political, economic, and social life in the Food for Thought paper section on social integration. Next are recommendations. While voluntary return and reintegration are highlighted in the Copenhagen Declaration, there is little focus on preventing forced displacement through social investment and peace building. MyCP suggested addition: strengthen integrated national social protection and peace building systems to address the root causes of displacement, including poverty, inequality, conflict, climate vulnerability, and governance failures, while promoting resilience, social cohesion, and durable solutions. MyCP wants to emphasize that climate change is a driver of displacement. Second, the Copenhagen Declaration focuses on regular pathways to migration, which may unintentionally marginalize those with irregular status or stateless people. MyCP urges states to commit to universal and non-discriminatory access to essential services, regardless of migration or documentation status. MyCP suggested addition: ensure that all migrants, regardless of status, have access to basic services and protection in line with international human rights standards. Third, Commitment 4 of the Copenhagen Declaration requires states to eliminate the increasing acts of racism and xenophobia targeting migrants, migrant workers, and their families. MyCP calls for stronger actions to address intersectional forms of violence against migrants, including LGBTQ+ discrimination and gender-based violence and displacement. And lastly, fourth, social protection cannot be achieved without care work economies, which migrant workers, especially migrant women, are overrepresented in, often without protection or recognition. MyCP suggested addition: build resilient and gender transformative care systems that recognize, protect, and support the rights of care workers, including migrant and refugee women working in domestic and informal sectors. The Migration, Youth, and Children Platform hopes our suggested additions are taken into consideration ahead of the Second World Summit for Social Development in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to World Vision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Margie Simo, and I speak on behalf of World Vision. World Vision welcomes the Food for Thought paper and commends the co-facilitators for prioritizing inclusive development, human dignity, and a renewed global social contract. As a child-focused organization working in over 100 countries, we urge that the needs, rights, and voices of children who make up half of those living in multidimensional poverty be placed at the heart of the World Social Summit outcomes. We welcome the reference to strengthening social protection systems across the life course. However, we urge a more explicit focus on children who require an integrated package of essential services, including health, education, nutrition, and child protection. Social protection must be child-sensitive to effectively break intergenerational cycles of poverty. World Vision supports the inclusion of multidimensional poverty and the recognition of the need to move beyond GDP as a measure of progress. To ensure this approach captures the realities children face, we recommend integrating child-focused and age-disaggregated indicators, linking poverty reduction to nutrition-sensitive social protection and investments in maternal and child health, and building resilience among families with children to prevent recurring poverty. On intergenerational solidarity, World Vision affirms the value of inclusive dialogue but emphasizes the need to go further. Intergenerational efforts often focus on youth and overlook children. We call for the institutionalization of meaningful child participation in decision-making at all levels. World Vision welcomes the inclusion of food security and nutrition and recommends a specific focus on eliminating child hunger and malnutrition. We propose acknowledging children's vulnerability to food insecurity and its long-term effects, integrating child nutrition into national budgets and protection systems, supporting food system models that connect livelihoods, microfinance, and local procurement, and acknowledging the role of nutrition as a foundation for cognitive, learning, and protection outcomes. Programs like school meals are vital entry points, promoting not only nutrition and learning, but also inclusion and gender equality. We also appreciate the emphasis on maternal and child health and suggest strengthening links with nutrition by recognizing the first 1,000 days as a critical window for development and integrating nutrition services into primary health care systems. While we welcome the call to renew the social contract, we highlight the absence of a clear focus on children. Children are not only the future, they are the present. A renewed global social contract must prioritize child rights, participation, and well-being to build cohesive and resilient societies. World Vision remains committed to working with you to ensure that the summit's outcomes deliver lasting impact for the world's most vulnerable children and their communities. I thank you.
Thank you. I give now the floor to International Cooperative Alliance.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, I'm honored to speak today on behalf of the International Cooperative Alliance, the global voice of more than 3 million cooperatives and over 1.2 billion members worldwide. We call on member states and all partners to ensure that cooperatives are explicitly recognized in the political declaration of the World Social Summit as key actors in achieving sustainable and inclusive development. Second, cooperatives are not theoretical alternatives. They're well-established, people-centered enterprises delivering real impact. As highlighted in the Food for Thought paper, cooperatives are already addressing today's pressing challenges, from poverty eradication to decent work, social protection, gender equality, and food security. Rooted in democratic governance and shared values, they put people and planet above profit. Third, all around the world, cooperatives create more than 280 million decent jobs with a strong focus on women, on youth, and marginalized communities. We deliver affordable housing, healthcare, and financial inclusion, including, I appreciate the comments from our colleagues who spoke to the importance of children, of people with disabilities, and other folks who are impacted as we're addressing things like the housing crisis. They also build resilience through mutual insurance, fair trade, and sustainable agriculture, and advance the green transition through renewable energy and circular economy initiatives. Fourth, however, to scale this impact, cooperatives need enabling ecosystems, inclusive legal frameworks, access to equitable financing, and full integration into national and global policy agendas, particularly in the context of the SDGs and social development strategies. Fifth, we respectfully urge member states to explicitly include cooperatives in the political declaration as recognized development stakeholders, to commit to growing the cooperative and mutual economy as part of a renewed social contract, and enable cooperative models into public policy on employment, housing, social protection, and climate resilience. Sixth, the 2025 UN International Year of Cooperatives is a pivotal moment and offers a global platform to showcase how cooperatives contribute to the SDGs and how they can serve as partners in accelerating progress toward Agenda 2030. Cooperatives around the world are mobilizing to raise awareness, deepen partnerships, and align efforts with governments, civil society, and the UN system. Seventh, leaders from the cooperative and mutual sector look forward to actively participating in the World Social Summit in Doha, where they will present a 5-year commitment plan outlining how the movement will scale its impact, advance the SDGs, and contribute to building resilient, inclusive, and sustainable communities beyond 2030. In closing, cooperatives represent one of the most proven, inclusive, and scalable models of social innovation and collective well-being. With political will and strategic partnership, they can be at the forefront of the transformation this summit seeks to achieve. We urge all member states to recognize cooperatives as a core solution providers in the political declaration and in the journey toward a fairer, more sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Program Your Future.
And distinguished representatives. My name is Alan Krita Dayal, and I'm the founder and executive director of Program Your Future, a social enterprise focused on educating and empowering over 20,000 underrepresented and at-risk youth from all across the world for their success and retention in high-paying fields, including entrepreneurship, STEM, and computer science. I've also been on the program committee for the United Nations World Data Forum. A key section of the Food for Thought document that stood out to me the most was about policies that harness technology and AI to advance social development, eradicate poverty, and enable quality education, productive employment, and decent work for all, and especially through the collaboration with private sector for advancing social development strategies. And so today, I'd like to share a few related strategies with you all that have worked well in uplifting PUF communities. At Program Your Future, when we are thinking about equity and inclusion, we're not thinking just about whether classes are available. We are also thinking about how those classes are taught, how students are recruited and at what age, and how the classroom culture supports diverse learners and promotes retention. One of the major challenges youth face is an inability to access hardware technologies and reliable Wi-Fi networks, which consequently hampers our ability to access quality education and other career preparedness opportunities. In our technology-driven world, that has a direct effect on our future job prospects. And so it's very important for us as community leaders to think of how solutions to this setback can be integrated into our communities. I'm a strong advocate for data-driven approaches, and after measuring the positive outcomes across multiple thousands of students that have gone through my programs, I have found that youth, underrepresented women of color, and economically disadvantaged students will experience enhanced engagement, interest, and achievement in education in high-paying fields if they are provided A, guided, recommended, personalized, and adapted quality learning opportunities in STEM and computer science that best meet their individual needs, and B, opportunities that directly enhance their underlying motivations and development of identity that is compatible with their future pursuits in these high-paying careers. And we can do so by leveraging different interventions such as real-time data analytics for continuous improvement, and two, an ecosystem of community partners and interventions, whether it's through collaboration with schools, businesses, or not-for-profit organizations. So as an example, one thing we've done is developed fun AI-powered educational learning games and apps that can be accessed from anywhere around the world without a Wi-Fi connection. And our web-based educational technologies, including virtual reality course materials, as well as tailored robot building and programming games, utilize machine learning algorithms, artificial intelligence, and gamification to create a personalized and engaging learning experience that sparks our students' interest about STEM careers, exposes them to role models that look just like them, and equips them with the rigorous practice and knowledge to become high achievers in their STEM subjects. And our programs also provide early industry exposure through hands-on internships and provide longitudinal college and career mentorship opportunities along each step of their academic journeys with regards to both technical and soft skills, including entrepreneurship, public speaking, product design, and management, as well as financial literacy. And so what we've seen is if we implement such a model in collaboration with governments and private sector, all of our collective efforts and commitment can really prove to be successful in meeting many of the goals outlined in the Food for Thought paper and promoting positive self-perceptions and retention in the field, which is necessary for stopping the leaky pipeline of at-risk students dropping out of their college majors or careers altogether. And so by urgently focusing on such initiatives for economic empowerment and scaling them into a greater number of communities, we can help underrepresented youth build out their interests and proficiencies in high-paying employable skill sets. So thank you so much for having me here today, and I'd like to wrap up by saying that the most effective way for us to address the barriers that are faced by youth is by co-designing with youth themselves. My organization, I would be happy to continue the conversation with all those who are interested, and thank you again, looking forward to the discussions today.
Thank you very much. And I would like just to seek your indulgence with time. We have a very long list of interested organizations to speak, and we only have 1 hour and 10 minutes left. So in order to give the maximum chance to all to speak, kindly stick to 2 to 3 minutes maximum. Otherwise, we will not be able to exhaust the list of organizations that are asking to speak. So I give now the floor to Human Rights Watch.
Co-chair. I'm Lena Simmet from Human Rights Watch, speaking on behalf of the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors, a coalition of over 130 NGOs and trade unions from all parts of the world. We note that the Food for Thought paper calls for a renewed global social contract anchored in the respect for human and labor rights and fundamental freedoms. In light of today's challenges, from demographic shifts and economic crises to conflicts, this World Social Summit is a critical opportunity to commit to the universal realization of human rights for all people at all stages of life. To achieve this, we need to address the root causes of inequality and injustice, placing the reduction of extreme inequalities at the heart of our efforts. This should be reflected in the summit's outcome document. For a transformative social agenda, we must act with urgency. Governments need to uphold existing human rights frameworks and adopt new measures, including the right to development for all generations, with attention to informal workers, unpaid caregivers, and those facing age, gender, and disability-related barriers. The right to social security also lies at the core of this. Yet today, nearly half of the world's population still lacks access. This is especially dire in Africa and for groups such as children and older persons. Many countries face austerity measures, often imposed by international financial institutions, that undermine social security. The debt crisis only has deepened this. The World Social Summit should tackle these challenges head-on. We call for political will and concrete measures in at least 3 areas. 1, a clear commitment from all states to establish universal social protection systems and floors, with national strategies developed in consultation with civil society and clear time-bound goals for full implementation. 2, strengthened international cooperation, including technical expertise, financial support, and a mechanism for periodic reviews to ensure accountability. 3, debt relief for countries burdened by unsustainable debt, reform of international financial institutions' conditionalities that restrict social protection, and tax justice reforms to ensure the wealthiest pay their fair share to fund universal social protection systems. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to International Organization of Employers.
Distinguished colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this important session. I am Shay Gopal, speaking on behalf of the International Organization of Employers, representing 50 million enterprises on behalf of all sizes, enterprises across all sectors and regions. These businesses, forming the backbone of the real economy, provide livelihoods to billions and serve as engines of innovation, growth, and sustainable development. I am also speaking on behalf of the Business and Industry Major Group. We appreciate the efforts of the co-facilitators in preparing this initial document, which integrates many of the elements previously highlighted from our perspective. From employers, it is encouraging to see an emphasis placed on inclusive social dialogue, skills development, youth employment, support to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and the broader enabling business environment. Our contribution to the process centers around 5 core priorities, which we feel are essential and to make the outcome and the political declaration both actionable and impactful. First, we urge explicit recognition of the private sector as a central driver of sustainable development. MSMEs are principal providers of employment, and without viable enterprises, there can be no sustainable job creation and poverty reduction. A conducive environment that supports businesses' sustainability and resilience is essential to unlock their full potential. Second, we advocate for strong and effective labor market governance. This requires trust in institutions, sound policy frameworks, and adaptive regulatory approaches. Transparent governance, anti-corruption measures, and equitable policies underpin both fairness and productivity. Third, we underscore the vital role of employers and workers' organizations. These social partners rooted in the realities of the workplace are indispensable in shaping and implementing policies. Their active participation fosters economic stability and social cohesion. Fourth, we highlight the critical importance of investment in skills development. Education and lifelong learning are imperative for competitiveness and adaptability in today's fast-changing world of work. Fifth, we stress that productivity growth is essential for achieving social justice. Boosting productivity drives job creation, reduces informality, and improves living standards. Finally, we welcome the ILO's contribution to the World Social Summit and support the prioritization of sustainable enterprises, productivity, and skills. Supporting MSMEs, especially through coherent policy and institutional support, is vital for inclusive and durable growth. We stand ready to collaborate with you and look forward to continuing the dialogue in Qatar. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Global Youth Initiative for Social Inclusion.
Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. My name is Vaishnavi, and I am an educator where I work with young people for climate action and sustainable development. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Global Youth Initiative on Social Inclusion and Agora Mexico. We are part of the major group for children and youth. We are here to emphasize on the need for quality education for climate resilience and just transition, which are two of the priorities highlighted in the Food for Thought paper. While the Food for Thought paper separates climate resilience and just transition from quality education, I would like to emphasize that education is necessary to create climate-resilient communities and for just transition. Keeping this in mind, we as young people would like to put forward the following recommendations for the Zero Draft. First, limiting quality education to digital literacy and AI is not enough. We need climate and environmental literacy to be pushed into our mainstream educational programs and curricula. This must be reflected in the education section of the Zero Draft. These are not just stories. They are scientific lessons that our generation needs to understand the risks and extreme impacts of climate change in our communities, on our food systems, our oceans, and biodiversity. We also suggest adding language on the need for sustained investment in higher education in the zero draft of the political declaration to make higher education more accessible for young people and reflective of the changing world, while ensuring investment in research and development for clean tech, blue, and green economies. Here, I would like to highlight that clean tech is supposed to be accessible, not exclusive, to ensure just transition. Third, the Sendai framework for DRR prioritizes investment in understanding risks and strengthening and investing in our disaster risk systems. It also highlights the implementation strategies to support youth-led approaches. The synergies between the Copenhagen Declaration and the Sendai framework should be referenced in Social Summit Political Declaration. Building on this, we would like to reiterate that our education systems need to evolve from traditional curricula to integrating SDGs into educational system, a recommendation that can be championed in the outcome document of Social Summit. And this would lead to capacity building and training to create resilient communities and economies. Finally, the Food for Thought paper also highlights the importance of social policy for families. As young people, our message is clear. We cannot talk about families without recognizing the role of families in all their diversity, whether nuclear families, single-parent household, blended families, LGBTQI+ families, or chosen families. References to families in the zero draft must also include reference to diverse family structures. As a youth constituency, we are not opposed to the reference of the word family or family rights in the text. But we are strongly opposed to using the family narrative to further curb rights of women, LGBTQI+ community, and others. Evidence shows that women, children, and youth have a higher risk of threat during a climate disaster. For this, we need to invest in resilience for families and communities, and there is a need for capacity building and development for gender and age-responsive disaster preparedness, as detailed in Priority 4 of the Sendai Framework. As young people, we hope to see these additions in the paper, and we hope they are also highlighted during the Second World Social Summit, especially now when we see an increasing threat due to climate change and its impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Commonwealth Youth Health Network, you have the floor.
Distinguished delegates, my name is Tiara Sitnor, and I am speaking on behalf of the Commonwealth Youth Health Network. I would like to offer reflections on the topic of financing social development and the intentional cooperation as framed in the Food for Thought paper. We appreciate the paper's emphasis on advancing reform of the international financial architecture and recognizing the impact of external debt and unilateral coercive measures on the fiscal capacity of countries in the Global South to uphold the social rights of their people. We also welcome the focus on enhancing international tax cooperation and on the value of North to South, South to South, and triangular cooperation in supporting national ownership and shared solutions. This must be retained in the zero draft. In addition, we respectfully suggest the inclusion of the following elements. Universal social protection floors. We recommend clearly framing these as a non-negotiable foundation for the social development with actionable, measurable commitments. This should include support for the progressive implementation of nationally defined social protection floors in every country, backed by both domestic and international financing. Second, debt cancellation and crisis response mechanisms. We propose that the inclusion of automatic rules-based sovereign debt restructuring frameworks and special debt relief mechanisms triggered by external shocks, ensuring that countries facing unsustainable debt burdens can prioritize investment in education, health, and social care over debt servicing. We cannot talk about social justice without ensuring economic justice. Third, a human rights-based financing approach. We recommend that all financial strategies be rooted in human rights obligations, ensuring equity, participation, and accountability in line with Commitment 1. This could include the adoption of human rights-based public finance systems with assessments of the impact of macroeconomic policies on vulnerable populations. Next, youth and intergenerational equity. We finalized the importance of committing to youth responsive financing, including mechanisms to provide dedicated funding for youth-led initiatives and safeguard the ability of future generations to live with dignity. As Commitment 4 urges, we will foster the active participation of youth in shaping our common future. We call for a clear reference to intergenerational equity in the zero draft. And finally, strengthening linkages to the FFD4. We suggest a stronger articulation between the World Social Summit and the 4th International Conference for Financing for Development, with the latter seen as a critical space to secure fiscal and policy commitments necessary to realize social development goals. Specifically, we call for the inclusion of issues like sovereign debt restructuring, global tax justice, and climate finance. This ensures democratic control over finance, addressing historical inequalities in development finance, and amplifying global South leadership in decision-making. Embedding these priorities within the FFD4 process would be a step toward building a more equitable global economic architecture. The Commonwealth Youth Health Network hopes these recommendations can be contributed meaningfully to the process ahead of the World Social Summit. Thank you.
Thank you. Communities discriminated on work and descent. You have the floor.
Distinguished delegates, my name is Laura Stanovic, and I speak on behalf of the stakeholder group of Communities Discriminated on Work and Decent and its ECOSOC accredited partner organization, the Inclusivity Project. We first wish to express our full support for the statement delivered by the major groups of other stakeholders, as well as by the NGO Committee for Social Development. In my intervention, I want to make 3 points. First, highlight an existing gap in the declaration, Copenhagen Declaration. Second, the African continent's leadership to close that gap. Third, concrete suggestion and next steps. First, the existing gap concerns communities discriminated on work and decent. The umbrella term describes all those who face caste and analogous forms of discrimination, often tied to specific occupation or inherent statute. They are known locally as Haratai, Como, Diam, Jongo, or Osu, and others in Africa, Roma in Europe, Quilombola and Palenque in Latin America, and the Dali and Burukumin in Asia, and others experiencing barriers to education, employment, justice, and political participation, often being confined to stigmatized, dangerous, or informal labor. Recognizing and naming this form of structural inequality is essential for crafting targeted policies, ensuring dignity, and fulfilling the promise of leaving no one behind. Second, the African continent's leadership in closing that gap is extraordinary, continuing the momentum established when the Pact for the Future was adopted. The latest example of this leadership is Resolution 619 of the African Commission for Peoples and Human Rights, passed in November 2024, titled Resolution on the Protection and Promotion of the Rights of Communities Discriminated by Work and Decent. This resolution recognized caste and analogous forms of discrimination in Africa and commissions on continued-wide study on the phenomenon. Lastly, our solution. Explicit recognition. The text must name the phenomenon of community discriminated on work and decent, or caste and analogous forms of discrimination. Such recognition is critical to implement and amplify existing solutions and global attention. Second, addressing structural barriers. The outcome document should condemn socially enforced restriction on employment and forced labor based on family lineage, which directly undermine the principle of dignity and equality enriched in the Copenhagen Declaration. Commitment to emergent realities. A renewed commitment must address contemporary challenges, including the intersecting inequalities faced by over 270 million communities discriminated on work and decent work worldwide. This includes integrating their realities into framework for decent work, social protection, and equitable development. I thank you.
Thank you, and also thank you for respecting the time. FEIM and WMG, you have the floor.
Thank you. Betty Levy speaking on behalf of FEM and the Women's Major Group, which is part of the 21 stakeholder groups, major groups and stakeholders in the MGOS coordinating mechanism. I want to thank you for hosting this meeting, first of all. And I want to say that we align ourselves with the statements from the other MGOS coordinating mechanism groups and the NGO CSOC-D committee. I'm taking this opportunity to speak on behalf of CSOs as we ask for an open and transparent process and information sharing. We ask for full and meaningful participation at this important summit as the 10 commitments of Copenhagen are reviewed and revised. While we support and commend the efforts for the Food for Thought paper, it leaves us asking many questions due to the lack of information regarding logistics and the process, and these are process questions, that has led to many rumors being spread and misinformation. So first, can you explain how the program is being developed? Is DESA involved, or is this only member states? What does CSO have what role in this planning? What formal role will CSOs have in the official meetings? Will they have speaker and lead discussion roles, the ability to intervene from the floors? Will CSOs have access to draft documents, observe the negotiations? At most UN conferences, usually there's a pre-meeting for CSO to have a forum, for a separate youth forum and a separate feminist forum that is supported by the host country but planned and led by their own constituencies. Is this already in the works? What can we do to ensure that this happens? And just thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. We will come back to all the questions raised at the end of the meeting. So I give now the floor to March for Our Planet.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. My name is Daniel Helmer from the United States of America. I represent a Global South-led movement that is majority marginalized communities-led, known as March for Our Planet. And I am also a regional focal point at the Sustainable Consumption and Production Youth constituency of the Major Group for Children and Youth. The World Social Summit is critical to all of us, not only the Global South, through various aspects. I will be speaking on the deeper need for social integration, a deepening in effort on not just food security, but the push for food sovereignty, along with nutrition and total poverty eradication. Firstly, social integration is an important aspect across our world. Discrimination happens and targets many marginalized communities across the world. Poverty targets the majority of marginalized communities, including Dalit youth, women and young girls, indigenous peoples, farmers, and more. Our allies at the communities discriminated based on work and descent, CDWD, that note that poverty and discriminated communities go hand in hand, often through centuries of discrimination. Therefore, we as Youth and March for Our Planet insist on putting discriminated and marginalized communities first and making sure their contexts are incorporated within the zero draft of the World Social Summit. Not only from a global north perspective, but also from the perspective of cultural contexts and systems of these discriminated communities directly, including indigenous people, women, youth, and where diversity of marginalized communities are celebrated and upheld with respect and recognition in the outcome document of the World Social Summit. Secondly, our planet is facing many different crises aspects, including the need towards adaptation of the climate crisis and preservation of environmental biodiversity. Food security is one aspect of food, but through marginalized and indigenous aspects, we find the shrinking of rights of farmers and communities to keep control of their food systems, including seed-saving rights by encroachment of international corporations who seek profit and not community sustainment. Therefore, food sovereignty, which is integrated within community nutrition, is central and integral for communities to demand preservation and communal wealth, including biodiversity within villages and for indigenous knowledge preservation. We must shift the social summit from food security to a core pillar around building communal food sovereignty across the world. Third, finally, in order to eradicate poverty totally, we must integrate indigenous knowledge practices, sustainable consumption and production, incorporate people-led cooperatives and nonviolent economy solutions that involve nonviolent livelihoods that do not force people into the compromising positions to violent capital economies, and that only decide that some may survive. We must have all survive. We hope to see a stronger focus on economic justice within the zero draft, an introduction of the concept of the nonviolent economy, recognizing the crucial nexus within social development. Finally, poverty must remain a strong focus within the zero draft, matched by strong political commitment. Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity, it is an act of justice. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life. And so, like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made and it can be overcome and eradicated by actions of human beings. Dignity for all, economy for all, justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Save the Children.
I thank the co-facilitators for today's consultation. As key partners in achieving progress towards social development, we hope there will be additional opportunities for civil society to contribute to the negotiations. Save the Children welcomes the attention paid to social development issues relating to children in the paper and supports inclusion of concrete, measurable, and time-bound actions to address them in the negotiated outcome. To further improve the outcome of the Summit for Children, we encourage the co-facilitators and member states to also include the following elements in the declaration. 1. Reaffirmation of the rights of children in all their diversity as fundamental to social development, with specific reference to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. 2. Support for child participation, including that of girls, in decision-making at all levels, in line with the CRC and the 2030 Agenda. Support establishment of mechanisms that enable child participation, like child parliaments, advisory councils, and ombudspersons, and encourage implementation of the Secretary General's guidance note on child rights mainstreaming to strengthen child participation across the work of the UN. 3. Progressive achievement of universal child benefits as essential for children's welfare and to interrupt intergenerational cycles of poverty. 4. Specific attention to children in conflict, humanitarian and fragile contexts, as well as refugee and displaced children, including strengthened commitments to invest in and integrate education in emergencies, child protection, health and nutrition services, and mental health and psychosocial support into national emergency response plans. 5. Increased funding for and strengthened resiliency of essential services to the climate crisis and other shocks, including social protection, education, health and nutrition, and child protection. Support for participatory approaches into the planning processes. And finally, inclusion of a monitoring framework for monitoring and accountability. Thank you, and we will share our feedback in writing as well.
Thank you very much. The floor now is for International Federation in Aging.
Thank you. I wish to thank the co-facilitators for convening this meeting. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to the question of the political declaration. There is no shortage of commitments made by governments to address the persistent problems, to face challenges, and to plan for the future. Since Copenhagen, we have had a plethora of commitments and promises made by governments, articulated in numerous outcome documents, resolutions, declarations, and programs of action, including the Beijing Platform for Action, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the 2030 Agenda, the Paris Agreement, the Political Declaration on Universal Health Coverage, the Pact for the Future with the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations, to name just a few. In addition, hundreds of resolutions are adopted by the General Assembly each year for action to be taken by governments. And on the horizon, there will be the outcome document of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, to be held in June and July, and the upcoming ministerial declaration of the High-Level Political Forum, to be held in July. I have a number of questions. What will make this Social Summit political declaration stand out? Or will it end up being a lot of reaffirmations, recognitions, emphases and stresses, recollections, expressions of concerns, reiterations, acknowledgements? If the declaration is to give momentum to the 2030 Agenda, is the time frame limited to 2030? Or will the declaration address what needs to be implemented beyond 2030? What will the declaration address that has not been addressed before? First of all, the declaration must recognize that the future belongs to all of us, not just the youth or the unborn. We all have a stake in our future, irrespective of our social or economic situation, whether that future comprises decades, a number of years, or only just a few days. Government legislation, policies, and programs have an impact on all our lives until the day we die. The main goal of United Nations recommendations is to improve the lives and dignity of all people, of all ages, everywhere, leaving no one behind. And my final question, what will be the added value of the Social Summit Political Declaration? Thank you.
Thank you. I give now the floor to Outright International.
Thank you. My name is Ophelia Kemidcha. I am one of the organizing partners of the LGBTI stakeholder group, and I am delivering this statement on behalf of the major groups and other stakeholders, which is a coalition of 21 diverse constituencies representing the voices and expertise of civil society from all regions of the world. Some of my colleagues have spoken, so I will not repeat what they've said, but align ourselves with the statements from communities discriminated in work and descent, the Women's Major Group, the Major Groups for Children and Youth, and other MGOs who are here today. The queer Black feminists of the Combahee River Collective said it best. We realize that the liberation of all oppressed peoples necessitates the destruction of the political economic systems of capitalism and imperialism, as well as patriarchy. Any political declaration adopted in this time of sweeping change must name and dismantle the systems that produce exclusion. It is the experiences of the most marginalized among us, of LGBTI plus communities and individuals, of older persons, indigenous communities, persons with disabilities, and communities discriminated on caste and analogous forms of social stratification that lay such issues bare. Specifically for this document, we call for a reference to the ending of violence and discrimination against people due to their sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, and/or sex characteristics, ending non-consensual surgeries against intersex infants, harmful conversion practices, and outright violence against trans people is a matter of urgency. We affirm that the liberation of LGBTIQ communities and persons is not controversial or a matter of opinions, but central to social cohesion and advancement. We reiterate that the naming of the realities of marginalized communities is urgent, as it will open the door to targeted interventions such as legal protections, inclusive policy design, affirmative action, community-led monitoring, and investment in historically marginalized communities rather than blanket abstract language. It is urgent that we create systemic pathways for social equity, dignity, and justice. Lastly, while we welcome the references to the leveraging of digital technologies, including AI, we are concerned about the energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions associated with the unregulated scaling of these technologies. We urge that the UN Environmental Programme's recommendations to member states to establish standardized methods and metrics for measuring AI environmental impacts, and with a focus on the most concerning direct effects, be taken into consideration. We cannot grow our technology beyond the capabilities of our shared home. We thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to future consultations. Thanks.
Thank you. International Disability Alliance, you now have the floor. Alliance, sorry.
Thank you very much, co-chairs. I'm Matthew Kelson. I'm pleased to address the room on behalf of the International Disability Alliance, representing the voice of persons with disabilities globally. We deeply appreciate the convening of this stakeholder meeting and the updates provided by Belgium and Morocco today. Co-chairs, persons with disabilities remain among the most marginalized globally. We must seize the opportunity of the World Social Summit to chart a way forward that ensures the full and equal participation of persons with disabilities, upholds their rights, and guarantees the resources and systems necessary for dignity and inclusion. Progress is far from where it needs to be. To achieve the SDGs for and with persons with disabilities, we will need to accelerate current rates of progress by between 2 and 65 times, depending on the target. Let us be clear, the structural exclusion of persons with disabilities is evident across every domain addressed in the Food for Thought paper. In this regard, we call for the following topics to be explicitly addressed in the political declaration. First, the elimination of all segregated services, time-bound deinstitutionalization strategies, and the scaling up of community-based services. Second, reimagined care and support systems through a rights-based lens. Third, national disability employment strategies with measurable targets. Fourth, universal disability-inclusive social protection systems that address both income poverty and the additional cost of disability. Fifth, health equity for persons with disabilities, inclusive education, and food security systems. And sixth, closing the digital divide for and with persons with disabilities. Co-chairs, the political declaration must also formally recognize organizations of persons with disabilities as partners in all follow-up processes related to the summit, and that includes CSOC-D revitalization. This is a necessary precondition to realize the promise of nothing about us without us. Co-chairs, we look forward to further elaborating on these points in the lead up to the summit. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Red Dot Foundation, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you to the co-facilitators. My name is Jillian D'Souza Nazareth, and I represent the Red Dot Foundation. As a member of the NGO Committee on Social Development, we also align ourselves with their statement. We welcome the Food for Thought paper and especially the parallels drawn to existing outcome documents and resolutions. We especially appreciate the structure of the political declaration, supposedly being action-oriented and readable. We also welcome the acknowledgement to ratify and implement relevant conventions. And taking this a step further, we wondered if there is scope to include linkages of accountability between the Copenhagen Declaration and the target achievement for Agenda 2030. We are, though, concerned about the harnessing of technology, especially AI, to achieve social development, as we risk reducing humans to a number or a data point. One, if cannot be measured, certainly ceases to exist. Lastly, I wonder if you could share some reflections and plans for civil society space at the summit in November. I thank you.
Thank you. ICUU Women International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women. You have the floor.
I'd like to thank everyone who spoke before us. I agree with a lot of what has been said, and I think there's a lot of commonality among the things that have been said. The International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women is a faith-based organization working on gender equity around the world. And we looked at the Food for Thought paper under the aspect of gender equity. So as an overarching comment, which I hope will make it into the political declaration, is a reminder that respect for all human rights and fundamental freedom includes women's rights, but women's rights are human rights. More specifically to the fourth part of the paper, what struck us was that there really needs to be more on data capture and analysis. We recommend adding a section specifically on data capture and analysis to the structure of the declaration. And then within that section, we call for gender as an explicit dimension in all data collection efforts. While we support the development and implementation of multidimensional poverty measurements that is already in the Food for Thought paper, we feel that the development of measurements that capture human well-being and human-centered and sustainable development would be even more impactful. These measurements would help us move beyond traditional GDP metrics. We also see the need for robust and accurate measures that capture unpaid, underpaid, and equitable paid work. And we need disaggregated data that will allow for more targeted policies and that will increase the appreciation of more inclusive metrics to measure sustainable development, as I already mentioned. So we need this disaggregated data on all of these metrics to facilitate gender mainstreaming. We also, and this is a bit of a stretch, but we also wonder how we can facilitate the integration of citizen research and community engagement in all efforts, since we believe that a lot of really good data collection and analysis comes from CSOs. So that's something to think about. In the 14 points, you do have gender equity and equality, but it only has 2 subpoints. And I think we need to really tease out a little more in that section. Everything is right now is lumped together. We need equal access for all women and girls to all education. We've heard that before today. And skills training, especially in digital technologies, that really needs to be called out. We need to increase efforts to combat gender-based violence in all its forms, and we need special attention to women-led development efforts and local solutions. And finally, in the section on social contract, we would very much appreciate it if there were the opportunity to include wording that recognizes the interdependent web of all existence of which humans are a part. And in that section also involved the request to involve women at all levels of decision-making, ensuring equal access and parity, using quotas where needed. And we've heard about migration here today. It would be great if we could have faith-based sanctuaries available everywhere in the political declaration as well. I thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to International Association of Schools of Social Work.
Thank you, and thank you for holding this, this hearing. My name is Lynn Healy, and I'm the main representative for the International Association of Schools of Social Work, an NGO that has held ECOSOC status since 1947. And we're active across a broad number of topics that relate very much to the Summit for Social Development. I specifically serve as a member of the NGO Committee for Social Development and have been participating with them for a number of years. Social work is a very broad field, and our interests span so many of the topics, certainly including poverty. But I wanted to take just a few minutes to call attention to my appreciation for the inclusion of a significant emphasis on social integration, which I feel has often been the neglected pillar from Copenhagen. Particularly at this time, in this climate, it is very important to focus on the need for social integration and inclusion. This certainly includes the emphasis on reducing inequalities within and among countries, including gender equality, which in spite of the many commitments made under SDGs 5 and 10, the documentation shows that inequalities continue to worsen and grow more severe. I very much appreciate the inclusion of a commitment to advance measures to eliminate racism and discrimination, including some of the statements that have been made here today about some often neglected sources of racial discrimination. and also the mention of addressing disinformation and hate speech, which has spoiled the opportunity for meaningful problem-solving dialogue on so many of these issues. I also encourage the co-facilitators to ensure that human rights continued to be mentioned and strengthened in the final document. Human rights, it's often been criticized that the SDGs have de-emphasized the commitment to human rights and the much useful data that is included in the human rights treaty bodies. For recommendations, I also want to strongly encourage the involvement of NGOs and civil society as crucial to the success of both the summit itself and follow-up implementation. And I note that the social work organizations played very important roles in the 1995 summit in Copenhagen, which was a highly inclusive and participatory event, which included NGOs and the broader civil society in the planning that led up to that. And I echo some of the questions that Betty Levy raised from the MGO Women's Group about the need for more information sharing so that NGOs know how to prepare for the upcoming summit in order to join you as partners. And finally, I also support the recommendation in the body of the document for the strengthening of the Commission for Social Development as a primary follow-up body to ensure that the commitments that are made at the upcoming summit will be followed through and monitored to 2030 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. AARP, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thanks for this paper and the opportunity to speak. AARP is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization supporting all to choose how they live as they age. Since the Copenhagen Declaration and Program of Action, the world has been undergoing a seismic shift. All aspects of the political declaration should reflect the new reality that we live in. We're aging. By 2050, 80% of the world's older people will live in what are now low and middle income countries. The political declaration should indeed be people-centered, including poverty eradication for older women and full employment for older persons. I will share 3 points for consideration in this text and further detailed recommendations in writing. First, older persons and older women in particular face cumulative impacts of discriminations over their lives. If older women receive them at all, social protection mechanisms are often inadequate, with less coverage and lower income for older women than men. Universal social protection represents the best chance to lift older women out of poverty. Second, there are at least 6 generations alive today. Efforts to promote intergenerational dialogue should engage all generations. It's wider than youth and those of working age. Older women should be included as full, equal, and meaningful participants in matters that affect them. Third, we cannot continue to exclude older people from disaggregated data collection efforts. Stopping data collection at 50 or 60, or lumping them together after those ages, erases a growing population. Lastly, another good change since the Copenhagen Declaration. The Human Rights Council adopted a resolution this month to start drafting a convention on the human rights of older persons. We urge that the political declaration reflect the changing way the world sees older persons as rights holders of equal value and worth. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to the Inclusivity Project. I think they're not with us in the room, so I move to NGCY and One Up Action.
Thank you for organizing this important and meaningful commentary session. My name is Sai Archana Dura, and I serve as the co-executive director of One Up Action International, a youth-led global organization centered on accelerating and implementing climate solutions through climate mental health, environmental justice, cultural awareness, and nature-based solutions. In today's commentary period, I would like to emphasize the importance of prioritizing universal health care, mental health resources, and participatory policy-building processes for climate legislation. We appreciate the Food for Thought paper's focus on universal physical and mental health care, both of which we believe are fundamental human rights. Mental health is often neglected in global health conversations, and we appreciate the inclusion of this language. We also commend the paper's emphasis on climate resilience, a just transition, and disaster risk reduction. In particular, we applaud the commitment to strengthening adaptive social protection mechanisms for populations vulnerable to climate-related disasters. While the paper provides valuable commentary on climate resilience and access to universal health care, we offer additional recommendations to further ensure equity and accessibility. The first is resilient healthcare systems in the face of climate disasters. While the Food for Thought paper has emphasis on making healthcare systems resilient to global health emergencies such as pandemics, we believe it neglects meaningful language around a major threat to healthcare systems across the world: climate change, which will exacerbate issues such as heat waves, pollution, and weather-related disasters. As climate disasters rise, hospitals can experience power outages, get flooded, and experience infrastructure damage. According to the World Economic Forum, our healthcare systems may face up to $1.1 trillion of burdens due to climate-induced impacts. Additionally, the second point we wanted to note of is addressing mental health stigma globally. We believe that equity in mental health care cannot be achieved without addressing a major barrier to care that is often left invisible: stigma. Only 16.5% of individuals worldwide who experience depression seek help, with stigma being one of the biggest barriers to receiving mental health care. We call for the inclusion of strategies aimed at reducing stigma across seeking mental health support. Additionally, our third point is integrating social determinants of health into your paper. To ensure truly universal accessible access to healthcare, we must address the social determinants that shape health outcomes, such as income, education, housing, and environmental conditions. We encourage the paper to reflect on how these intersecting factors impact accessibility and equity in healthcare delivery. The fourth point is participatory climate policy design. Oftentimes, climate policies about the future of the world are often made without the input of young people, the very people who will be living these policies. We call on inclusion of language in the paper centered on co-creation, specifically more co-creation mechanisms for climate policy, where young people have an active voice in building the solutions that will impact the future generations to come. We call on the summit process to incorporate these recommendations into the paper's contents to ensure a more inclusive and resilient approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I give the floor now to NGO Sisokdi.
Good afternoon, Excellencies. Thank you for convening us today. My name is Cecilia Schurmeister, and I serve as chair of the NGO Committee for Social Development Subcommittee on the World Social Summit. I'd like to begin by expressing our gratitude to the co-facilitators for your efforts in compiling this document. We stand ready to support you. Taking a step back to think about the summit more broadly, NGO CSOC-D asserts three overarching elements to guide the multilateral system's work forward. Let's take these as the three I's: interdependence, inequalities, and implementation. Firstly, interdependence. Humanity must recognize its interdependence and develop commensurate policies and programs. The well-being of any segment of the population is connected to the well-being of the whole. The 21st century, characterized by higher levels of connection, is also characterized by new challenges emerging from increasing complexity that do not respond to political borders: climate change, pandemics, and the digital sphere, to name a few. In order to address these challenges, we need to objectively assess our conceptions of development and how they reflect our interdependence, and to ask ourselves whether the dominant models today are suitable to achieve our goals. Next, inequalities. Inequality is on the rise and cuts across numerous dimensions, from income to education to health. The general principles section of the Food for Thought paper covers the three pillars of social development and other areas we must progress on. The inequalities manifest are symptoms of a deeper illness at the root of these social challenges. That illness has to do with the way in which we conceive of development and the way we relate to others. Finally, implementation, which of course remains a perennial challenge for the UN. The political declaration for the summit is only as powerful as the steps taken to translate it into action. The Copenhagen Declaration set a strong precedent 30 years ago, and in today's geopolitical context, it sets a high bar that the international community has yet to realize. We must renew our ambition to implement, and the Food for Thought paper is the start of building consensus on this. NGO CSOCD therefore welcomes the Food for Thought paper's recommitments and its call to action to close the gaps, and its suggestion on the 5-year review, the strengthening of the CSOCD as a primary follow-up body, and its call for suggestions on CSOCD revitalization, which the NGO CSOCD plans to contribute to. But we also hope that the forthcoming negotiations inquire at a more fundamental level how we can address these inequalities at their roots rather than by responding to the symptoms, and reimagine systems that encourage positive societal change. So to end, I'll just pose 2 questions. Firstly, how can we ensure an open and inclusive process for negotiations, including for those who aren't based in New York? And how can civil society participate in the summit's design and engage in its program? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Soka Gakkai International.
Hello. So I'm Ivy Cook, and I represent Soka Gakkai International. I'm also the co-chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women here in New York. And there have been so many excellent statements already made today that I would want to just echo. So many. So I'm not going to repeat any of those areas. But there's 2 particular, it was already mentioned by Unitarian, our UU representative, but the section on gender equality and women's empowerment definitely needs to be strengthened. But the portion on education, a little bit concerning because it seems that it's quite, my colleague next to me also mentioned it, AI and technology, and we know that's a reality for many of us, most of us. But if most of the world still can't get a basic education, I feel like we're a little bit detached from the realities on the ground. So a little bit more work, I think, needs to be made. There's other types of education, peace education, human rights education, the social skills that we need as human beings to engage with each other. These are so essential. So I would like to emphasize that. And the logistics question about the social summit and engagement of CSOs, hopefully, I know that the organizers, we do appreciate these convenings, like consultations like this, so thank you for the co-facilitators. But what is it going to look like? People need to plan ahead, of course, for the summit as well. So as much detail as soon as possible, of course, would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women. Okay. And so the floor is for Plan International.
I'm pleased to deliver this statement on behalf of Plan International. We welcome the Food for Thought paper and appreciate the ambition to build a just, inclusive, and sustainable future through the upcoming World Social Summit. We particularly celebrate the strong reaffirmation of gender equality, the recognition of social protection as a foundation for social justice, and the emphasis of decent work, universal health coverage, and quality education. We also welcome the reference to the empowerment of women and girls and the call to mobilize financing for inclusive development. However,
We encourage further strengthening of the Zero Draft to fully reflect the unique realities of girls and adolescent girls. Their specific needs and the intersection of age and gender remain insufficiently addressed. References to education, violence, and participation must go beyond generalities and explicitly name girls who face compounding discrimination and marginalization, especially in contexts of conflict, climate crisis, and digital exclusion. We also urge a more robust inclusion of sexual and reproductive health and rights, recognition of girls as leaders and agents of change, and clear commitments to protect girls from technology-facilitated gender-based violence. These are essential to achieving transformative change and delivering on the promise to leave no one behind. Finally, we call for sustained investment in girl and youth-led movements and the institutionalization of their meaningful participation across all stages of the summit process and beyond. Plan International remains committed to supporting a bold, inclusive, and forward-looking political declaration that truly centers the rights, voices, and leadership of all children. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Make Mothers Matter.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, thank you for the consultation process and the opportunity to express our view. My name is Jacqueline Leduc. I am the United Nations representative for Make Mothers Matter, an international NGO advocate for mothers' rights. We federate a network of more than 50 organizations who federate more than 10 million of mothers around the world. We at Make Mothers Matters and convince that there cannot be social development and no future without care. And I also want to say thank you to all the other organizations who support this topic in the summit. In the COVID-19 crisis, clarify the fundamental role of underpaid and unpaid care work, exposing the inequitable distribution of unpaid care work, which is at the root of gender inequalities and a cause of economic injustice, poverty, and social exclusion for women, in particular when they are mothers. But care should not be framed as a gender equality issue only, not confined to the realm of family policy making, and this is the case in the Food for Truth paper. Similarly, the Beyond GDP commitment must go well beyond the simple addition of a new set of social indicators. It must go hand in hand with profound transformation of our economic and social systems to ensure that they prioritize human rights and the well-being of people and the planet and properly value the care of caring. Recognizing the essential nature of caring for each other and for the planet, valuing and supporting this indispensable work is foundational for human and social development. It is also about building more caring communities and societies, a more caring world which in turn fosters equality, in particular gender equality, as well as solidarity and cooperation, inclusion and trust, and ultimately social development and peace. Care is the way forward. This Second World Social Summit presents a unique opportunity to recognize the role that care plays in creating the enabling environment in which other elements of social development can be strengthened through society and thanks to the participation of civil society. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to EABICCS.
Co-facilitators, ladies and gentlemen, I am from the Ethiopia-Africa Black International Congress, Church of Salvation, and our leader petitioned the United Nations and its various agencies to link all the activities, especially food for thought in the social development, to human rights, more so Article 1, 3, 4, and 15. Now, over the past 500 years, the black people who were brought from Ethiopia, Africa, have been raped, pillaged, disseminated by the Europeans, the Americans, and the Arabians. In order to have equality and justice, international peace and security, we demand freedom, redemption, and international repatriation and reparation for us, the black people who were taken illegally out of Africa to develop the Western diaspora. This injustice that has been carried out for centuries has left scars on us, the people, the black people, that cannot be corrected in a short period of time. And in fact, it is impossible to correct these injustices in the Western diaspora. As a result, we demand 7, 9, or 13 miles of Black Star Liner high-water ships to take us home to Ethiopia, Africa, the motherland, because in the Western diaspora, there is no justice for us, the black people. So Article 1, Article 3, Article 14, and 15 must be linked to the food for thought papers dealing with the World Summit on Social Development. We want the United Nations, as we said, to implement the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because if these are not acted upon, then the entire world of people will face, destruction, as what is happening in some parts of the Middle East today. So it is better for us to be returned under our own vine and fig tree to fulfill history and prophecy, so that the world can become a better place for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. We've now come at the end of the speakers list of the stakeholders. We also received 2 requests from the UN system. I now give the floor to OHCHR.
Facilitators. OHCHR has been working closely with DESA and other UN partners to support the summit preparation. I'd like to take this opportunity today to share some of our own reflections on the Food for Thought paper. First, on the general principles, we welcome that the Food for Thought paper builds on the Copenhagen commitment to all human rights and fundamental freedoms. This interdependent and mutually reinforcing nature of human rights and social development is crucial, and we suggest to include references to the right to development as a bridge between social development and human rights, and between individual and collective responsibilities. The paper aptly called for a people-centered approach, but this will remain empty words unless accompanied by substance and concrete actions. That substance is human rights, and there should be a reaffirmation of commitment to equality and non-discrimination, diversity and inclusion, and meaningful participation. Second, on the general context, we suggest stronger emphasis on the demographic shift, especially population aging, as a defining trend since Copenhagen that is reshaping our society, along with digital technology and climate change. As such, we would like to see in Zero Draft more concrete actions specifically focused on older persons and intergenerational solidarity. Third, on call to actions, we welcome the focus on care and support system, but the current framing in the paper limits the issue to social policies and the role of the family. Instead, in line with recent resolutions of GA, ECOSOC, and Human Rights Council, as well as the Pact for the Future, care and support systems should be recognized as a broader societal, economic, and human rights issue that extends beyond these areas. Zero Draft should reflect a more comprehensive approach which emphasizes the shared responsibility of states, community, private sectors, and families, and between women and men. On poverty eradication, we'd like to see a commitment to a human rights-based universal social protection system. And on the role of private sector, it is important to also emphasize their responsibility to respect and protect human rights in line with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. And similarly, when discussing about the role of technology, human rights can serve as guardrails as recognized in the Global Digital Compact. And lastly, reaffirmation of the right to a healthy environment is key to promote a just transition and resilient society and prepare and protect vulnerable population from climate change and climate-related disasters. We look forward to continue supporting your efforts towards a successful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. UN Global Compact, you now have the floor.
Hi, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today and for the updates on the World Social Summit. I'm Megan Galvin, and I'm pleased to speak today on behalf of the UN Global Compact. The UN Global Compact is a special initiative of the Secretary General engaging over 23,000 companies globally to align their strategies and operations with our 10 principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, and to take action in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. Recognizing the important role of the private sector in advancing social development, we believe it is crucial to ensure the role, responsibility, and perspectives of the private sector are included in the conversations and outcomes of the World Social Summit. Including responsible business practices in the World Social Summit outcomes can strengthen alignment between government priorities and business practices that impact employment, wages, and social equity. As key drivers of job creation and economic opportunity, businesses can play a vital role in reducing poverty and inequality. Integrating responsible business practices, such as promoting living wages, into the summit's agenda supports member states in achieving SDGs related to decent work, poverty eradication, and reduced inequality, among others. Living wages play a crucial role in facilitating access to basic human rights, ensuring that individuals and families have the financial resources necessary to meet their basic needs. They also contribute to conducive environments for the respect by business of workers' rights overall. We believe that promoting enabling environments for responsible business conduct through the World Social Summit offers a powerful opportunity to drive broader social development goals. It also supports the effective implementation of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. Including diverse business voices, especially from the Global South, throughout the consultations and declaration of the World Social Summit will help ensure summit outcomes reflect practical guidance and are more inclusive, relevant, and achievable for member states and businesses alike. The UN Global Compact is ready to support member states with tools, connections, and insights to help ensure private sector responsibilities are included in the World Social Summit processes and broader social development agendas. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we now come at the end of the speakers list. So before wrapping up, we will try to reply or give at least some clarifications following questions or things that we know are requested. When it comes to how we functioned with civil society before, the co-facilitators have engaged on multiple occasions. This is not the first hearing that the co-facilitators organized. The last one before this one was in November. They've engaged before that also in similar hearings. They've engaged through the major groups and other stakeholders mechanism of ECOSOC. They've engaged through the 5 regional commissions, and they're still doing that. And of course, they also had direct dialogues, and they will continue, of course, this dialogue with civil society. On more like what's next, of course, as explained, we will soon come, the co-facilitators will soon launch the zero draft. And it's important, and we've advised this also at earlier hearings, the co-facilitators really stress the advice that you, of course, take direct contact with delegations, member states, because, of course, the intergovernmental nature of the negotiations. On logistics, this is honestly, I mean, certain parts, of course, of participation, etc., are, of course, already clarified in the modalities. On the real logistics of the summit, this is not something in the hands of us representing the co-facilitators. This is something that the Secretariat, DESA, will explain for sure in due time. We will check before we close if the Secretariat has anything to add at this point. And now I look at Miriam if she wants to add before closing.
Thank you, Frédéric. Not much to add, just to first to thank all of you and also for being very direct and ambitious and for sharing all your insights with us. Indeed, the fact that we are meeting with you today and the fact that our ambassadors have tasked us to make this meeting happen specifically this week can only show how much we do care about your engagement in this process. Obviously, you all know that this is indeed an intergovernmental process where member states will be negotiating in the room, but your voice and your views matters indeed, and this is why we really urge you to continue your advocacy vis-à-vis the member states as well. So everything will be conveyed in due manner within the intergovernmental process. So, and regarding all the logistical aspects of the summit, as any other United Nations conference or summit, the logistical aspects come as we get closer to the summit, and I do believe that logistical notes and information will be shared in due course. And here I would invite our colleagues and support in DESA to share if there is any update with regard to the preparation of the program, and also especially with regard, we heard a question about, for example, side event registration. If there is anything to share at this stage, please, Masumi, thank you.
Thank you very much. Responding to the questions regarding logistics of practical nature, such as registration, accreditation, side event applications, and pre-summit activities, information will become available in the coming months on the summit website, which will be updated regularly. And we will also reach out to you through various stakeholder networks to keep you informed of any developments and of opportunities for engagement. Details of the official program is to be developed under the leadership of the President of General Assembly, and more information will become available in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we come to an end for this meeting. Thank you again. We do, if there is any upcoming hearing in the next phases of the process, we will let you know through DESA, and please keep engaging actively in the process. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.